While a hit with kids, it's no secret that the Armada range was, maybe still is, polarizing at best with older TF fans. Since Beast Wars, most Transformers toys have followed the standard of alternate mode, transformation of varying complexity, fairly posable robot, with a minor trick or two, even if it's just spring-loaded weapons. For some, Armada felt like a step backwards, what with its brickish, malformed robots built around an overly elaborate gimmick. And it's not like the toys were part of some simplified sub-series, like the fast-action battlers, activators, and so forth. In this case, the gimmick toys were the mainline toys. There were no sublines. This was a problem because if you didn't like that figure, well, you didn't have many alternatives. Though with Chug revisiting post-G1 characters, there's a new chance for the Unicron trilogy designs to shine. Which brings us to today's subjects. In addition to the original Armada hotshot and his Minicom partner Jolt, I'll also compare them to the Universe 2008 set. For full coverage of the Universe molds, check out my review of Timeline's die-in with Copter. They're the same toys save for the colors and, well, another change I'll address later. Starting with the little guy, both Jolts are simple, neat little helicopters. In the show, Jolt was two-tone red, with the brighter shade being more of a salmon color, whereas on each figure, he's one consistent shade of red, both inaccurate to the show. The layout, such as where the silver's applied, the black windows, and the red rotors, is pretty faithful on Armada Jolt. But for visual appeal, I prefer the darker red and additional black on Universe Jolt, especially on the rotors. It looks so much better and diverse than a borderline solid red Copter. Also, while their arms form either missile pods or pontoons, they're better integrated on Universe Jolt, whose hand details are only sculpted on the bottom where they're hidden, not the whole piece. The only eyesore with the newer Jolt's alt mode is the upside down tail fin. And yes, the rotors spin freely on both. The two Jolts sport different transformations. AJ's is more show accurate with the cockpit feet, but I'll give UJ credit for trying something new. Though given the results, they probably should have reused AJ's conversion, as UJ's posability is a total crapshoot. Yes, he has working shoulders, elbows, and hips, but since said hips are unified and, he can't bloody stand, what's the point? Like Copter, he's super back heavy and his feet are completely hollow. Granted, AJ shares that last flaw, but his feet are bigger, and with actual hinged knees to help him balance, it is possible to keep him upright for more than 5 seconds. See? More than 5 seconds. AJ lacks elbows, though his shoulders move, and the hips are on independent ball joints. Okay, posability's still not great, but when the older toy still succeeds in that regard, you've done something wrong. Other than that, both Jolts look okay. His head design still unintentionally evokes Power Glide, and the red only furthers the resemblance. I'm sure everyone and their brother has gone into why Hotshot himself is one of Armada's more infamous creations. So, why did I buy him at TFN? Curiosity's sake, I guess. And having it in hand, I have to say, he's kind of overhated. It's generally agreed that the sports car, based on the Audi TT, is easily the better of the two modes. Even then, a common complaint is that Hotshot's cast in an obnoxiously bright yellow. Well, it sticks with you, I'll give you that, but honestly, I'd say the deco, for the most part, works. You have some nice metallic paint on one set of headlights, the grille, part of the hood, part of the hubcaps, and the windscreen to break up the main colour, as well as the red taillights. And sure, maybe the yellow could have been muted just a tad, but it still makes sense on what's supposedly a flashy sports car, does it not? Frankly, I'm more bothered by these bright red caps. Why not paint them the same gunmetal blue-grey as the rest of the wheel? Other than that, the colours are fine. Though I will admit the Power Links repaint, at least in car mode, kicks ass. The caps are black so they don't clash as much, and the yellow flames against the mid-red chassis give him that extra flair. Yeah, that was terrible. Form-wise, he's mostly solid and clean, save for the visible head and back. Also, the reason for these caps is one of them's actually a missile head. While the front wheels were done to match, they didn't bother with the rear left, which is just the missile tail. On the plus side, there's some okay molding, some of it painted, such as on the grille, both sets of lights, the door handles, gas cap, as well as the Autobot logo on the spoiler. Why they painted the areas inside the sigil instead of just the symbol itself beats me, but it looks sloppy. Fast forward to 2008, and Universe Hotshot is seemingly going for a more realistic look, with clear plastic used for the headlights, tail lights, and most of the windows. He retains the bright yellow chassis, roof decal, and blue trim, but thankfully ditches those stupid red caps. Honestly, I think that was the biggest problem with the original. Bright colors themselves aren't strictly an issue, it's how they're applied. This Hotshot sports a JaAmmin license plate, in reference to a certain parody comic. Check the link in the description, I can't do it justice. Finally, for alt mode, the engine is sculpted onto the hood, whereas on the original Hotshot it's a separate piece. Which brings us to the gimmicks. For Armada Hotshot, the engine, which also pegs underneath Jolt, activates twin flip-out saw blades when you plug and press it down on the hood. You know, in case the twin guns on the engine itself didn't cut it. It's also a transformation step, since the saw blades are his feet. In addition, AJ can peg onto the center of the 3 minicom ports situated at the spoiler, and fold in half, resulting in either a speed boost or flight mode. Practical or not, it's kinda fun. Instead of a peg on top, Universe Hotshot has an indentation to recreate this feature. But since his Jolt transforms differently, you can't fold the minicon so the rotors point back. However, as I showcased with Diane and Copter, an unofficial transformation and utilizing the rear bumper post does the trick. It's kind of impressive whenever they come up with multiple transformations for the exact same character model, including Hotshots. There are commonalities, both roofs split into arms for instance, but whereas the Armada figure simply folds up panels, the Universe version also turns inside out and back again. Pretty clever. Too bad the clearance on the latter sucks. There's barely any room for the parts to maneuver, no thanks to the rear bumper kibble. That's one thing I'll give the Armada version, he's more fluent to transform. For what it's worth, both Hotshots capture the character's race car driver motif pretty well. The red represents the suit, the silver across the torso resembles a safety harness, and his head design is that of the helmet, complete with an adjustable visor, made of a different plastic on each figure, with similar etched tech details. Unfortunately, the original Hotshot is pretty misproportioned. Skinny thighs, chunky lower legs and arms, the latter are also too long. And don't even get me started on his upper body, cause when you get down to it, he doesn't really have one. It's just molded details on 2/3 of the car. Well sculpted, I'll admit, but still. He doesn't even have a fully 3-dimensional head, it's just a fixed piece of plastic. On a more amusing note, his expression is supposedly a battle cry, but the shape of his mouth makes it seem like a cheesy grin. Posability is, likewise, subpar. The hips and knees are ball-jointed and have a decent range. However, his shoulders can only swing in and out, the elbows bend, and he technically has swivels above the elbows, but since they're not pinned at the center of the arm, yeah, they're clearly transformation-only joints. And as I said, his head is fixed. And now for the main event. Hotshot sports a 4th minicon peg on the back of his waist. Plug on a minicon. No, I'm not going there because it's the most overdone joke in Hotshot reviewing history. Push up, and the cannon, or Axel Zuka as the fans call it, flips up, rotates, and shoots the missile in a single motion. You know what? I actually enjoy the gimmick for how swift and dynamic it is. Unfortunately, you can't store the missile with the cannon aiming forward. You either have to rotate it back, or reset everything entirely. And sadly, this is why the upper body's structured the way it is. It's essentially a solid piece, in order to properly and securely store the cannon. Finally, the engine can peg onto his torso or any of the minicom ports, which is actually kinda good considering he can't wield the damn thing like a gun. The posts are too small for his hands. So how does Universe Hotshot fare in comparison? Well, he's much better proportioned. The arms are shorter and not quite as chunky, but still muscular. His shins are trimmed quite a bit, and with the omission of the Axle Zuka, Hotshot actually has a torso and three-dimensional head now. This is the young, tough rookie soldier we all know and somewhat tolerate. However, they also omitted the twin blasters that came with both the Japanese release, Henkei Hot Rod, and subsequently Dian, so he's completely lacking in weapons, unless you pop off the back kibble and peg them onto the forearms as unofficial gauntlets. But it gets worse. If you recall with Dian, there was a gap in the rear bumper for weapon storage underneath the car. With that gap now covered up, the bumper halves overlap somewhat and don't sit as flush. Trust me, that gap makes all the difference. You can arrange the kibble like this, which is debatably messier, but it frees his shoulders quite a bit in terms of posability. And speaking of, the shoulders swing in and out and swivel back and forth. The head is ball-jointed. You have swivels in the biceps, thighs, and just below the knees. The hips swing back and forth as well as ratchet in and out. Lastly, his knees are hinged while the elbows are double-hinged. Like classic Jetfire, Hotshot doesn't have a flat footprint, and though his feet do technically lock into place as you can feel a click, they're barely secure. Despite these issues, articulation easily surpasses the Armada version. Universe Hotshot has just the one minicom port for Jolt to perch on, which doesn't activate any gimmicks. To this day, I feel it would have been better if Jolt was sold separately as a Legends class toy. Then there would be more room in the budget to fix both figures. I stand by that the original Armada Hotshot is overhated, but he's still not that great of a figure. His car mode's fine, barring those red caps, and his transformation is smooth if simplistic. However, the Axle Zuka, while a cool trick, practically kills the robot in appearance and functionality. The original Jolt is average as far as minicons go. He has his charm, but is still rather flawed, and definitely not enough to bring the set out of tin territory. Universe Hotshot looks and poses much better, though the back kibble's intrusive, and the removal of the launchers not only hinders play value, but makes said back problems even worse. Also, the updated Jolt is somehow inferior to the original. Luckily, this Hotshot holds his own enough to earn the set a bronze. If you're wondering, Dian, and potentially Henkei Hot Rod, would rank silver as they fix some of the mold's problems. Well, this was quite the traffic jam, huh? But even though it's over, the Armada Marathon has only just begun. For my next subject, I think a trip to Dark Mount's in order.